SledgeHammer Horror.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to SledgeHammer Horror. I am Ken Sledge, and today I am very pleased to announce I have the owner and editor-in-chief of The Daily Dead, Jonathan James. Jonathan, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Ken. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for asking. I know things are kind of crazy right now with quarantine. How you holding up with everything?
No, thanks for asking. I mean, holding up as well as one can. You know, what I say is that there are a lot of people who are in really bad shape. Obviously, there are people who have lost their lives. So I can't complain. I have my health. My family's healthy. We have a roof over our heads. So we're doing well.
That's awesome, and congratulations on that. I know right now having a family is very hard. My wife is a respiratory therapist, so this is something that we take very seriously, trying to, stay social distanced, stay masked up. I'm glad to hear that everybody in your family is okay as well. For those of you that don't know, The Daily Dead is a website. I will put their website, their Twitter handle, Instagram handle, Facebook, all down in the description. If you're not following them by now, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. It's something you should have been doing a long time ago. So make sure you're clicking on these links, giving these guys a follow. You want to give these guys a little bit for the people that don't know, what you kind of do over there at the website?
Yeah, of course. So I started Daily Dead, almost 10 years ago. We're almost at our 10th anniversary as a hobby project. And it grew from there, from me just, updating it every day to now we have dozens of contributors. We have readers from all over the world. And it's just been a joy of mine and a passion. And I love the team that I work with.
That's awesome. And to the rest of the team, if you guys are watching this, thank you for the work you do as well. We all appreciate it. Another perk to these guys, they do some really cool giveaways. So you can reward yourself just by checking out one of the coolest websites out there. So like I said, all those links are in the description. Check them out. But now we are here to talk about the first horror movie, what got you started on this whole trajectory. What was your first horror movie?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I see you have it over there. It's funny because in my office too, I also have a VHS copy of Alien because I needed it because that was my first movie. It's kind of a cheat because I guess I'll go into the story. It's kind of a cheat because when I was younger, it was, I had heard my mom talk about, she was big into sci-fi. She likes horror, but she loves sci-fi. And she talked about, I was asking her, what other movies can I see when I get older? She's like, well, there's this movie Alien. I just kept bugging her and bugging her and bugging her. Finally, I wore her down. She's like, we're going to do it. And so, we had a place called Pick a Flick. I used to live in Chicago. And so it's this mom and pop VHS store. And unfortunately, when we went there to get Alien, they didn't have Alien, but she brought back Aliens. So
Okay.
we did it in reverse order. So we saw that, and then we saw Alien right after. The reason why I do call Alien my first horror movie is because that's a story that she told me. The stories that she told me without having me see it. And also, I do feel like Aliens is more action. I don't feel like it's very scary. They're definitely intense moments, but watching Alien, really, that movie is horrifying. They have the guns in Alien. They keep them protected. They might be stupid in the way that they go in, but they can protect themselves. In Alien, they have very little, and they have very little information. This thing is hunting them.
Yeah, and I was going to jump on that bandwagon as well. I've always considered that the same thing. I've always considered Alien to be more of a horror sci-fi, with Aliens going more of the action route.
Yeah.
But both, great movies. I'm in the few that likes Alien more than Aliens. I hear a lot of people talk about that's one of the better sequels of all time, and it is. But I still think that, for me, Alien is much better than Aliens.
I did switch over time. I think as a kid, I liked Aliens better. And as I got older and I realized about the creative process, and you realize just how genius Alien is, it's hard for that not to be my favorite over Aliens.
Sure. So how old were you? You talked about your mom and stuff, and do you remember how old you were when you actually finally got to break her down enough to watch it?
I wasn't very old, so she was, she was very, she really, like I said, was happy to satisfy my curiosity with that, and allowing me to see, quite a few things. I think it was like 5 or 6, so I wasn't that old when I saw it.
Man, and being 5 or 6, a lot of these scenes would probably stick with you pretty hard, with how great the practical effects are in this movie. When you look back on it now, what do you think is the scene that has stuck with you the most over time?
That's a good question. I mean, it has to be the chest bursting scene, and I know that's kind of cliche to say, but it's one of the greatest scenes and scares of all time for good reason. Even some of the people, as as rumor goes or as legend goes, and the cast and crew were unaware of exactly what was going to go down. And yeah, it's just like I said, it's this really terrifying scene that I think really pushed the boundaries of the time. Again, you have to realize for people who are younger and who are maybe watching Alien for the first time, it may not be that gross, and you might be like I know that's fake, but seeing it in the 80s when I did, and the people who saw it in 79, like this thing was terrifying. You never expected that to happen. And yeah, so for that reason, I mean, that's definitely the standout scene of the movie.
Yeah, me too. And like you said, it's cliche, but the reason it's cliche is because as a kid, like you just said, we had never seen anything like that. So for everybody to say that scene is a scene that sticks with them, there's a reason, because we weren't used to stuff like that. I mean, I've told this story before, but I just recently showed my son Jaws. Is one of my favorite horror films. And my son was like, this is so lame. This is so bad. I'm like, and the kids these days, after seeing something like Saw 3, and then going back and watching Alien or Jaws, yeah, I can see where you see it's lame. But when I was a kid, these movies were absolutely terrifying to me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the good thing too is, like I said, it's horror history. So you might bring somebody into horror or sci-fi with a newer movie, but then you have the opportunity to go back and see how it all started, what inspired your favorite modern movies.
Yeah.
And like I said, and there's a lot of great things. For me, this is one of those timeless films.
Oh, me too. Like I said, I still own the VHS. This is the VHS I've owned. We used to own a video store when I was a kid called Downtown Video.
Oh, wow.
And so I still have a pretty nice VHS collection from that. And this is one of the ones that I've absolutely had to keep because it just it's transcended to me. I love sci-fi as well. So it's one of those movies that I don't think I could ever get bored or tired of watching.
Yeah.
So we're talking about how much of an influence you are in the horror genre. I mean, a lot of people follow you. You guys are a very popular site. How much would you say Alien contributed to that? Is this something a movie that stuck with you that hard over time where it's always been there? Or is this one thing that you've just kind of been on the fence about? Do you think it's one of the more influential movies in your life?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think it's one of the more influential movies of all time for horror and sci-fi, but definitely in my life. It informed, I think it expanded my understanding of what you could put on screen. Again, it was a very young age. Like I said, I was like 6 or 5 when I saw it. So I didn't really know how movies were made, but whatever idea I had at the time, you had to imagine, like, before that it was, because again, there's not that much time. I was so young, but it's like, Disney movies. And then, I kind of got into Star Wars. And so it was seeing those things in my mind as I just kept getting introduced to these new worlds and new concepts were just game changing. And so, yes, I mean, this was definitely a favorite of mine. And it's one of those things where I was at a young age, and Aliens had already been out, and Alien 3 hadn't been out yet, but there was a lot of merchandising. So I could get Aliens toys, and I could have, I could play with those instead of GI Joes. And
Right.
Kenner had made some, and so there were, like I said, there were a lot of opportunities. Same thing with Predator, because they had Predator toys. So those kinds of things really, kind of, were a big part of growing up. And then I would say, because it's a franchise, because it's Fox, you don't just have the movie. So there are other ways that this franchise kind of followed me, or I followed it, from the Alien and Predator arcade video games. There's Alien 3 for Sega. They had the PC Alien versus Predator from Rebellion back in the day, which was really good. And then Dark Horse has been making comics since the 80s.
Yeah.
And those stories, if you don't like what happened in the movies or you want more, I mean, there are thousands and thousands, probably tens of thousands of pages at this point worth of stories that just expand that universe. So there was, like, as much as I want more movies, there was other content that could satisfy me.
Sure. And like you said, that shows the influence of Alien. You get sequels, you get comic books, you get crossovers with the Alien versus Predator. I mean, I remember getting so frustrated at the Alien 3 video game for the regular Nintendo when I was a kid. I mean, that was kind of my first dive into Alien, was the video game for the Nintendo. So
that was a tough game.
That shows you. Huh?
That was a tough game.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So that shows you right there just how big this movie really was when you look at all the crossovers between comic books, other movies. This movie is absolutely amazing, and it all starts with Alien. So I'm big on the kills, so I got to ask you, in this movie, what kill do you think is, I hate to say favorite, but what kill stuck with you the most in that movie?
That's a good question. I'll exclude the chest bursting scene, and because we already said that one. So now this is a tough pick. You know, I have to say, still thinking.
Well, it's one of those things that this is, like you said, the chest bursting scene is so iconic that it's hard to think of another one.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's Brett. I'm going back and forth with that one, and that's what I was saying, because here's what was going on in my head, because you could probably see the gears going. I was thinking like Dallas's death is really pretty terrible, and then I was like, well, it's terrible only if you're looking at the director's cut. And the director's cut, I don't know if you've seen the director's cut, and a lot of people haven't, but in the director's cut, he's cocooned, and so he's in this cocoon, and she sets him on fire, and so, you know, so that scene I was thinking about, but most people haven't seen that one. So I'd say definitely it's Brett, because, you know, he's searching for Jonesy. He expects it to be this small little creature that's kind of, you know, like worming or snaking around. If it's a blink and you miss it moment where the alien is just like hanging up with those chains, and once it sneaks down and the audience realizes how massive this thing is, and Brett realizes how massive this thing is, and it's too late. And not only does he realize right before that moment of death that like he cannot stop this thing. Right. The audience also realizes that like we are in, like, this crew is in trouble.
That's where the doom comes from.
Yeah.
So now this movie, I'll get back to this in a second, but I got to ask you before I close this off with your skull rating. I always ask people this too. I go scream on you. That was your first horror movie. What is your favorite horror movie?
You know what? My favorite horror movie will change from time to time. I'll say right now it's Creepshow. Creepshow is just, you know, and I was just talking about it recently on our podcast, but it's a perfect mix of comedy and horror. It's the best horror anthology movie ever released. It's very hard to have all of the segments be worthwhile. In this case, they certainly are. They have great acting. You know, you got two masters of horror, George Romero and Stephen King. And you can't beat it.
Yeah, it's funny because every Father's Day we watch that because of the father. We have our movies we watch on different holidays, but that's one that we always watch on Father's Day is Creepshow because of the Father's Day segment. You know, so I can agree with you. I love horror anthology movies because of that reason. You can have one bad episode in it, and the whole thing is still great. While we're on that subject, real quick, let me ask you, what did you think of the Creepshow TV show they got on Shudder now?
The Creepshow TV show is a lot of fun. You know, I really enjoy what Shudder's doing with, with original content. Obviously, that's the way to kind of expand your base. And they've made some great investments, including, like I said, Creepshow, having Greg Nicotero at the helm. It was the right move, both from he's a practical FX master, but also he goes back to Day of the Dead. He has that experience with Romero. So in terms of somebody continuing that legacy, it feels like he's the right person to do it. And they've also been able to bring in plenty of talented filmmakers, new actors, classic actors. And so I'm very excited for the next season.
Oh, me too. And to be honest with you, I think The Finger is one of my favorite segments of any Creepshow ever. I can't remember the actor that's in it, but he played in the New Guy and Road Trip.
Name escapes me, but yeah.
Yeah, they had the hand that would go out and kill people for him and come back. I think that's one of the best Creepshow segments of all time. I absolutely adored it. So before we end this, let me ask you, go back to Alien. Usually I end this with a skull count, 0 being the worst, 5 being the best. You're ranking Alien. What's your ranking on it?
Oh, it's can I give it 10? But no, I'll give it 5. This is my favorite movie aside from Creepshow. This is my favorite movie of all time for good reason. If you haven't seen it, definitely, watch it. Don't sleep on this one. And hopefully you'll enjoy a whole new franchise because, once you've seen Alien, you got to see Aliens.
Well, and then even now with Prometheus, there's still, it was Prometheus, wasn't it? The
Yeah.
newest. Okay, make sure I got
and
the
then
title right.
Covenant was after that.
Covenant, that's what it was. They're still continuing that now. And like you said before, people that are comic book fans can get into it. If you are a big fan of the Predator series, they had the Alien vs. Predator movies. Some people didn't like them as much, but for me, it's Alien and Predator. I feel the same way for that as I do Freddy versus Jason, man. You got the two iconic ones in one movie. I'm going to watch them no matter how many they put out. So,
yeah, and the thing is, now it's uncharted territory because now technically Disney owns it all because they bought Fox. So, they have already commented that they're going to commit to this franchise, and we will see it go in some directions. We've seen the comics now move to Marvel. I'm curious to see where they want to move the franchise, whether it's TV or Disney Plus, or whether we see movies. But that's the world we live in.
Yeah, I'm very excited about it too because, like you said, Alien's one of those ones that's transcendent. It's not just horror. You do have a lot of different aspects in this movie. So I didn't know that Disney was going to continue it. That actually has me very excited. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem.
See, and if you guys want more updates like that, click the link down here and you're going to get plenty of news from the Daily Dead. So one last question before I let you go. Practical effects versus CGI. Which way do you lean?
I think that at this point, it's less of an argument. I think when we're looking at movies from the early 2000s, you could clearly see what was CG. Now, so much computer effects are passive and you don't notice them. It's, and you imagine removing wires, adding background buildings. Marvel will do it to increase the size of some of their characters' heads, so like Black Panther's mask looks more proportionate. So in a lot of cases, like if you look at Civil War and you look at that fight scene, you wouldn't know that half that stuff was actually digitally enhanced.
Sure.
And so I always think, but I don't think that people should go CG only and ignore practical. Practical definitely has a place. It's part of a filmmaker and a film crew's tool set, and you need different masters for different areas. And so, people can still see that difference. You'd rather see Iron Man in a suit, or you'd rather see an alien in a suit than one completely CG. We did see that in Covenant, where they kind of pulled away too much from the practical. They kind of covered it too much with like a CG overlay, or replaced it fully with a CG character. And to me, it takes away some of that magic. So I think a healthy blend of both can make magic and can enhance that practical application.
That's one of the best answers I've had, because I'm going to be honest with you, I've always been more of a practical effect guy, but growing up like we did, watching the Pet Sematary, that's one of my favorite movies when it comes to practical effects. I love Pet Sematary. I love when Gage bites out the neck, stuff like that. So, but you're right, the way that CG is now, a lot of times you can't even tell what's CG. So I'm with you. I think that's a really good answer. You do need the blend of both to make it work.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you mentioned too with the neck pull, right? Mm-hmm. You don't want to see CG blood just spewing out. That's still an area where it's kind of hard. And that's where, you can pull the skin, you can have practical, and maybe you polish it up with like I said, with computers. And like I said, that's definitely where things are heading. And as things continue to get better, I think one of the good things is, where we're talking about Creepshow and Greg Nicotero, is that KMB EFX, his team there, and have proven with like things like The Walking Dead that practical is the way to go. That if you dedicate the budget and the time, you can create these really memorable monsters and effects. And so I think between that, and then also what we've seen with J.J. Abrams, like pushing for more practical with the Star Wars series, and that's continued. I think there was a time where people thought that practical effects would go away, and now I think that's no longer a scenario.
Sure. And you're right. That's a good point. The Walking Dead really does push the practical effects.
Yeah. And they do some CG enhancements, of course, as well.
And I appreciate you so much for coming on, man. Anything you want to say in closing for people? Make sure they're checking out the site. I know, but any news you got coming up soon?
I'd say the big thing is, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Always happy to talk aliens. So thank you very much. And, I just say to your viewers, just stay healthy, stay safe. And, I'd also say support your favorite artists, your favorite writers. These are tough times. And so even just signal boosting can help. And there are also, if you're very fortunate, if you're doing well, if you have your job, there's a lot of people that don't. So, in these trying times, try to find opportunities to maybe help others in need. There are a lot of people that could use help, maybe even if, it may take some searching, but there are some great charities and there are some great individuals and companies that could definitely use your support.
That's awesome, man. That's a real genuine answer. So thank you so much for that. Don't go anywhere. I got a couple more questions for you. Everybody else, thank you so much for watching. Remember, let's keep talking horror. Stay what you are. We'll see you soon, guys.